My next question is this: in in an ever-changing world and in a world that is full of distraction, how can people maintain consistency and focus in order to achieve their goal?
Yeah. I mean, one, you got to baby step it. I tell my students this when they have an assignment. Sometimes I give a big project,
Yes.
and I'll see some kids really flounder at the beginning because they're trying to look at the entire forest. And I say, no, start with a tree. Like, start with something you can be successful with. Start there. You don't start writing a really well-crafted essay by trying to write the whole thing. No, you start with, what's the idea? What do I want to communicate? And then what can I use to communicate that message? What information do I need? If I want to tell in a very literary way, what vehicle can I use as a metaphor about what I'm talking about? Like, those kind of things help you. And that's how you kind of develop it. You don't start with like, okay, I'm going to build the whole ship today. No, like, nobody does that. Like, we watch people build things around us all the time, but we never really stop and look at the nuance of what's happening. No construction company goes out and tries to finish a building in one day. It's impossible. If you do, it's going to collapse. It's not going to be a good building. Where do they start? They start with a foundation. The foundation is something that's not really complex, actually. Usually, it's just a bunch of concrete poured in a big block. It's probably the simplest thing to do. It's also the most important, because without a good foundation, you're never going to have a good building. It's always going to be clumsy and collapsing if you don't have a solid foundation. Your life and your goals are the same. You have to have a solid base. If you don't have a solid foundation, how can you build anything meaningful from it? And that's just, give yourself some baby steps. Like, a lot of times I'll approach a project. I'll sit down and make a list of things that need to be done. Sometimes I'll add things on the list that I've already done, because I get the validation of crossing those off. Yeah. Just like, phones are set up to be addictive to our dopamine, give us that dopamine hit. Gamify that kind of stuff too. Make a list for yourself. I say, okay, first thing I wanted to do was write my list. Oh, that's the first thing on the list. Oh, well, I did that. Okay, success one. But it does give you a feeling of accomplishment, and that gives you some drive to keep going. Yeah. Because some of the things on the list are going to be tough. Yeah. Some are going to be easy, some are going to be hard. And so just accomplish it by making those small steps and heading in the right direction. Yeah. And then if you have a few setbacks, it doesn't feel as overwhelming either, because you're just like, okay, that's just one step. All right, I can do that again. I can try again. I can make that better. I can improve it. Instead of like, oh, well, now I can't reach my goal in life because, well, I didn't have a plan. Well, of course you couldn't reach anything. You didn't have a plan. Like, that's not how it works. That's how life works. And look around. So anything around us, look at it as a model, and you'll see that there's always a plan.
Yeah. And I believe many people will want me to ask this question.
Okay.
Yeah. This one is like, just like you say, consistency. Many people tend to give up when they don't see the results coming immediately. You understand?
Yeah. The world of immediacy has become more and more prevalent, right? Like, these devices we own, I think people were a lot more patient in the past.
Wow.
I think in general, people were a lot more willing to work on something.
I'm just I can accept this. Like,
because I think of like my father, for example.
Yes.
He grew up in a completely analog age. Mm-hmm. And when I look back at some of the things I saw that he accomplished in his life, he was a guy who barely graduated high school. He didn't light the world on fire with grades. He wasn't a great student. He worked very hard, manual, physical labor most of his life. But he built something with that work. And he did that by not giving up. And he told me once, he's like, who am I going to give up on? Me? Am I going to give up on myself? Like, how can I do that? And then once he had a family, he's like, well, I can't give up on my family. So you have to find that reason, the motivation, your why, as they say, as like Simon Sinek says, right? You find your why, but your why's got to be something that's tied to you or to your family, or to something else. But that why is super important, and that's what gives you the patience to say, I might not be successful this time.
Yeah.
This might not work out. This might not be the thing that This might not be the podcast episode that has 10,000 views.
Yeah.
You've got to start. You've got to head down the road.
Yeah.
And I mentioned my podcast in the other show, and you know, like sometimes I've had songs and I've seen like there's been like maybe one download or maybe one person's listened, and I'm like, all right, that one didn't really hit the ball out of the park. But doing that song and making that song and being willing to put it out in public and let people see it has led me to make other ones that were quite successful. And sometimes I'm mystified too. I'll see one that's gotten so many listens or so many downloads, and I'm like, I'm still just as confused. I'm like, I don't know why this one's better than that one. The same guy made it. I used the same process. I don't know why this one was just more popular. And I think when you analyze those kind of things, you also see, back to that thing I said, what's my value? I stopped thinking about the success as to whether it's gotten a lot of downloads or a lot of views. I just think now, was I happy with it? Like when I go back and listen to that song, do I think like, I want to put this on repeat? I'd like to hear this 3 times in a row right now. And then that's a success in my mind. And if nobody else likes that song, I don't care. I just don't care.
Wow.